Welcome, Automating Success podcast followers. This is Joe Langton with Automating Success. Today, I'm super excited to have Patrick Baglien here with us. I met Patrick at a landscaping, actually, was it SEMA? Where I think
it was
where
time. Yep.
Yeah, and I saw his product, and things instantly clicked for me. And I said, "Listen, Patrick, you got to come on the show." And here we are. We're on the show together. So, Patrick, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about View Robotics and that.
I will. Thanks, Joe. So Patrick Baglien, I'm the CEO and co-founder at View Robotics, as Joe said. Before I do that, Joe, let me thank you for having me on today. True story, I was listening to the podcast before we met, so I had some familiarity with what you were doing here, and I've continued to listen after our conversation started in Milwaukee earlier this summer. So a big fan. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm excited to just talk about the space in general with you. And I've enjoyed the conversations you've had with previous guests.
Thank you for that. That is very inspiring and makes me feel really good inside. So thank you for that.
You got it. So let me put it this way. I'll tell you what View Robotics, what we do, and then how we do it. I would say View Robotics is really I think it's an indispensable service for property managers, commercial service providers, real estate professionals, and potentially other segments like government and infrastructure that we'll talk about. And that service delivers situational awareness at the site level around weather-related risk. And we help those different stakeholders mitigate it and understand what it is. Because weather presents a lot of challenges, as you can appreciate, and we'll talk about. How we do that is through a hardware and software platform that View has developed. The hardware platform is essentially a ruggedized wireless camera combined with a weather station. It's completely wireless. It includes an HD ultra low light camera and several weather sensors in the same enclosure. So a building owner or a commercial service provider can log onto their phone or their desktop and instantly see what the conditions at their portfolio of sites might be. And so we pair the hardware with cloud-based software. And of course, we may or may not get into it, but it includes all the bells and whistles that you would expect, like the ability to alert and rank where your different risk areas might be across your portfolio.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. Don't worry about that. So let's do this before we get into everything about that.
Yeah,
I always think it's great when I have people on the show to find out what you did before you got here, right? So take us back a little bit, a little more of your background and your experience base that got you to where you are today.
You got it. Yeah, come from a huge family, one of 5 kids, have 41st cousins, originally from the West Coast, the state of Washington. My dad was an executive. We moved a fair amount growing up. So I spent some time on the West Coast, and then the majority of my life I've spent in the Chicagoland area. Went to school at Michigan State. Professionally, I actually started my career in the NBA, which sounds cooler than it was. But my first
it seemed pretty cool when that's first I heard that. So that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. No, the business cards are awesome, and it was an informative experience. I actually worked for the Chicago Bulls right out of college, which was really a dream job for an athlete, 21-year-old graduate. And but I was selling, suites and ticket sales and group packages. All I'll say about that experience was the business cards were nice, the logo's cool, but it was really hard work. This is back when people actually used the phone to do business. And I would make 80 phone calls a day trying to solicit businesses to come watch live entertainment. So I dabbled in professional sports for a couple years. And then really, Joe, the informative stretch in my early career was at a company that's based in the Chicago suburbs called Underwriters Laboratories, or UL. Actually, they just rebranded to UL Solutions. And what's interesting about UL, and it's a safety, science, and certification business. So if you're a manufacturer and you're building a product that you want to sell either B2B or to the consumer, typically you have to get your product inspected to make sure and certified to make sure that it's safe, so it doesn't shock you or start on fire. The exposure that I got working there was really interesting because I would work with both mom and pop startup companies. It could be anyone from building a light bulb or a light fixture to TVs to HVAC to robots. And I would be on their ground floor or literally many times in their garage. And they were trying to work with UL to get their product certified so they could get it to market. On the other hand, I also worked with GE, Samsung, Philips, the biggest heavyweight manufacturing and product companies in the world. And it was my 8 years there that I started to really get exposed to product and technology and innovation. And I started to think about scratching that itch myself. And so after 8 years at UL, I jumped into the startup world, technology world. And previous to View, I was at another IoT wireless sensing company that I helped start and had a pretty good run there for a couple of years. Got exposure, learned a lot of lessons on what to do, what not to do when building a company, a technology company, and have taken those lessons. And now we started View. So I kind of went from big company experience. And then when I started to get into my mid 30s, I said, oh man, like if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So I took the jump into small biz and technology.
Yeah, that's awesome. The whole UL thing is actually kind of cool because that's one of the things that I talk to people about, even in the robotic space right now, about things being insurable. And, there's about a lot of people doing startups and stuff like that. And people are always trying to get me to jump into that stuff. And I'm like, right now, I actually just had this conversation the other day. I'm like, right now, I know that when I take a Husqvarna out of the box, there's a UL label on that transformer. I feel confident to use it. So I think it's actually ironic that you bring that up because for someone like myself who wants to insure a product, use it as an outdoor appliance, basically, I'm looking for that label.
Yep. Yeah, no, UL sometimes can get a bad rap for being any certification body can be tough to work with. And that's because the people making the product think about it last, and they're trying really hard to get their product to market quickly. And it doesn't get enough appreciation. It's a tough business to be in. It's a tough service to provide, but you're right. Like it gives the buyer confidence that the product was inspected by a third party. And it's given me exposure to like building product the right way. Don't take shortcuts. Quality is most important. And so I learned a lot of good lessons there.
Fantastic. So let's get back to View then. So,
Yep.
In order to have anything of value in the tech space, you have to see a reason for it, right? So what got you, when you ventured into the small business technology category,
Yep.
What were some things that you identified to say, hey, I got to bring a product like this to market?
Well, golly, you almost don't want to. It's like we had to. This was not a problem I was sleeping on for like 30 years, and I'm not going to pretend it was, but it's such a glaring gap to me in this world, and that gap is this. The real estate market or asset class, Joe, is the largest asset class in the world, period. It's 34 trillion in value. According to some studies, it's like give or take $1 trillion. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I can source that after. But the point is, it's a huge asset class. And my observation and my co-founder's observation was everything in this world is being monitored by sensors and cameras now. Your roads are being monitored pretty well. Construction sites are monitored pretty well. There's cameras everywhere. And yet, and having said that, at the same time, we know that I'll just call it extreme weather is becoming more common. This is not like really my opinion. I looked at companies like Aon who put out annual reports documenting disasters every year. And so you have an asset class that's really big. In the US, Joe, I think there's 6 million buildings over 10,000 square feet. And you have bad weather. And so our question was, how is this existing infrastructure being monitored? And what preventative steps, technology or otherwise, are happening so people can monitor and quickly react to weather events to make the spaces safe? So then I thought, okay, well, what's out there in the market? You got cameras everywhere, security cameras. You've got some sensors, like the things we see on the highway, RWIS stations, road weather information systems. And those do a good job, but they're wildly expensive. And so then we went out and talked to the market. So it's one thing to have an idea, and then you go out and talk to the market and you say, companies like Langton Group or real estate owners or property managers, and you say, how do you monitor the conditions of a site? Could be retail, could be healthcare, whatever, during, before, and after an event. And almost everyone said the same thing, which was, we get in the car and drive around. And I was like, that's what technology is for. Like, don't do that. It's a waste of money, and it's highly subjective. Like one condition might be bad to one person and good to another. So once we had enough product or market validation, we knew we had to do something. And so we incorporated a business earlier this year and started to get after it.
Yeah, so I'm going to I'm going to expand on that. So when I saw you at the event in Milwaukee, it's ironic because I had just been dealing with some pain points in the robotic business, and that pain point is, and everybody's trying to look for open API and what are they going to do with it. But I've actually thought a lot of companies, they're missing the boat on this, and the boat they're missing is they're like, okay, we want to park them and we're going to do this. Well, a lot of these companies already have apps that do that. So everybody's trying to merge one app to park them all together. What I'm looking for is like someone like yourself that can say, hey, there's standing water out here, so we shouldn't restart a robot. Mm-hmm. Or there's standing water now, and we just saw a picture of your robot driving right next to it, so you better park it. These are the real world things that I saw when I saw your system. And then what was kind of ironic about it is, I'm so hyper focused on automation, the space of automation right now with what we're doing at AOS, that I actually forgot about my bigger company right now is Langton Group, like you brought up. And then I was like, holy cow, all these snow removal sites. So I want to expand even on the whole, like, we drive around.
Yeah.
Ironically, when we're driving around in snow removal, it might take us 3 hours to get to a site that normally takes us 20 minutes. So now we're losing that time in that 3 hours of time it takes to go survey a site. Whereas I could likely have just looked at 500 images of each one of our properties and been like, looks good. Ooh, there's a problem there. And then I can divert resources instantly to that property and not waste time, which is valuable time in the slip and fall space. There's so much liability. So yeah, that's where, that was my moment of like, I need to get Patrick on the show, because I think sometimes people are focusing on like these big shiny things over here, but they're missing the simple technology.
I gotta say, we kind of laugh as we were starting the business, because it seems like in the news every other day, maybe if you follow this, there are new startups or tech companies launching satellites into space to get better weather coverage, and there's new robots with arms and wheels. And we were like, man, sometimes it seems like people are missing just kind of like the obvious. And our thing is not, our thing is simple, but it's hard. And we're like, man, it's one thing to do a weather forecast differently with satellites, but you can also just build something that's really reliable, high quality, and put it on the edge of a property on a light pole and let it do its thing. It's like I said, it's simple, but it's hard. So I don't know. It's not fancy, but I got to tell you, imagine if Langton Group was, and someday maybe there's 1,000 or a couple thousand properties across a region that stretches from the Midwest to the East Coast, because enterprise clients or retailers, because we'll also talk to, property managers and tenants also, Joe. And so like their issues are just bigger because they're dealing with several states worth of problems. And they do the same thing. Like they'll have their people in cars, and the business continuity groups are maybe not quite as sophisticated as most people think.
Yeah. So, I definitely don't want to undervalue or make it seem like your system is less sexy than it is, because
Yeah.
I was very attracted to it when I saw it, right? So there's a little bit of a sexy quality to what you're doing. So why don't you explain, because this thing's not just a camera, right? For the people listening, it's not like, why is Joe so excited about a camera? It's more than that. So go ahead and explain everything you're doing.
Well, okay. First of all, I'm unprepared. So for those on video, here it is.
Wow, right? You are prepared. This is fantastic. You're like the Vanna White of View right now.
Thank you. Vanna White of View. I like that. I'm sure my co-founder will give me a good laugh at that one later. What that instrument is a wireless camera, like you said, and it's an ultra low lux. So in other words, very low light conditions or starlight conditions. So it'll give you a great image day or night. In addition to the camera, which by the way is 120-degree field of view. And that's really important for property owners and service providers, because it's going to give you a huge picture of your site. And so if you could imagine a hospital or industrial, you'll want big exposure to where your risk might be. Then we asked ourselves, what environmental sensors are important to couple with visual verification? So table stakes is air temperature, of course, and humidity. But also we added a non-invasive, non-contact infrared temperature sensor that will detect the surface or object temperature. One example where this is really important that you understand, I'm not sure if the broader audience does, is in the wintertime, the surface of the pavement or asphalt or concrete, whatever it might be, and the air temperature could have a huge variance. It could be 28 degrees on the surface and 40 degrees in the air. And if you get precip, you could have an issue with ice or snow. So having a surface temperature sensor is really important, but it's really an object temperature sensor. So we can sense the temperature of any object. And then in addition to that, we also have a barometer and a air quality sensor. It's really a gas sensor that Bosch makes. And so we can get things like air quality index and read volatile organic compounds. Frankly, that it's an AI smart sensor, so we don't even know fully what kind of tricks we can do with that yet. But you're right, it's more than a camera. It has all these sensing, environmental sensing capabilities, and then we send that information via 4G LTE service to the cloud, and then you get the data on a user interface. And so you can see, like you said, all your cameras and sites on one platform. And then what we do is we bring in third-party weather. And so you can get a pretty comprehensive view of what the weather is nationally or at a site, or what the forecast is coming in. So you're right, it's more than a camera. And then, what's coming is that camera will also act as a sensor. So this year we'll be beta testing some computer vision and machine learning to do the things you talked about earlier, which I'm excited to do with you, which is, what is the condition of the ground? Is there a puddle? Is the snow sticking? Is the construction site built to the point where it's supposed to be built by this date? Because that camera can start to tell you what's going on in addition to the sensors.
So kind of fascinated by that, of course, because this is this would be great for me. So now explain a little bit how that would happen. I mean, is it like, so it's looking at images, right? So is it like, is the AI saying, okay, this is what it normally looks like here, now it looks different, so something is happening, right?
Basically, yep, you got it. It's anomaly detection. So we can train it to basically, this is what it looks like most times. And then when a change happens, whether that could be, like I said, a tree down, a full parking lot versus an empty one, or, standing water on a golf course, our image will be able to alert us to that effect. And what's really cool that other cameras probably can't do is we have all that weather sensing information on there too. So we can start to really validate the conditions beyond just the camera. So they complement each other. That makes sense.
Then it does. And to go back to that pavement temp sensing tool, for the people that don't understand and they don't live in the type of industry that I live and breathe in, which is snow removal. First, people don't even realize that most temperature is taken at 6 feet, right? And cold air is dense. So there's a lot of times in the winter where, the cold air settles in low spots. So you have dips and valleys, which anybody that understands weather knows sometimes you see frost in one part of your yard and the other part has no frost, right? This is what Patrick and I are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be a temperature sensor that channels, ABC News is set to in a network and it shows it's 35 degrees out, but 3 blocks away, topography is different. It might be 31. So people like us, we're looking for the people listening, like these little microclimates, because those are typically the areas where bad things happen, right? You say, I have no idea. I hear contractors say all the time, I had a slip and fall and I have no idea how. It was 36 degrees that day. Well, it might have been 36 degrees where they took the temperature, but not on the site,
Yeah, exactly. And I just add that, this creates a system of record too, our system. So every time it wakes up and sends data, that's stored forever. So as long as our customers need it or want it, and also, or as short as they want it, if there's some clients that have security concerns, but either way, it creates a system of record. So that data logging that the field guys do now, we do that automatically and it's objective. I'd also say that not all, but some guys will take the surface temperature little handgun that they have in their truck and pull it out of the truck and shoot the surface temperature. And of course, that is not going to give you a particularly accurate view of what's going on after sitting in a warm truck. And interestingly, at least to us, and maybe this industry, Minnesota Department of Transportation a few years ago put out a study that said something to the effect of, you need 4 times as much salt at 20 degrees surface temperature as you do at 30. Think about that. So when people ask me, they're like, who cares what temperature the surface is? I'm like, well, if it's 22 or 28, it matters a lot on the type of material and chemical reaction you need to make happen.
So you're totally right. This is one of the things that's caused Langton to be so successful in snow is we actually coded our saltings based on stuff like this. So we have like red, white, blue, black salting events, and it's all tied into pavement temperature, humidity, air temperature, and also what we're expecting it to do at the end of an event. So it's like if we start an event at 30 and we're going to end the event at 19 degrees, well, that factors in the amount of chloride. But, a lot of contractors that would say to you, Patrick, who cares? They're, I look back to when we were smaller and, we'd go through 1 semi-load of salt for an entire season, right? Which is hard to even fathom thinking back to that. But at one point, my brother and I thought we were big timers when the semi truck dropped a load, and we said, "Yep, there you go. That's what we're using." But then it's like, yeah, who cares? You just salt, and that's it, right? But when you get to the point where salt is your biggest shrink item, right? Now you're like, it's like walking into a Best Buy or Walmart. The reason they do inventory constantly, you have to control that. And you have to control it for many reasons: slip and fall liability, actual profitability, putting in order to replicate, having it where your people are always doing the same thing. That's why we do it. And that's why people like us look for relationships like this, because it allows your middle and upper management to make informed decisions and trust them. And the other thing to add, because I know people will leave me comments and say, okay, well, now you have all this stuff, and what happens? Patrick said property managers can have the data infinitely. Is this just going to hurt us for slip and fall? Well, here's the thing. If you have the information to make the right decision, it's going to help you. Okay. But on the flip side, if you have a frivolous slip and fall suit and you have a pavement temperature that says air temperature was 38, pavement temperatures were 36, now we can prove there could not have been ice on that property. So, right. So you've always got to look at the good and the bad with technology. I always see a lot more good in it than bad. So I just wanted to elaborate on
well,
that.
I would be interested to open the discussion up kind of slightly differently too. I was at an event last week in Ontario, and it was a room full of service providers talking about technology and the adoption and how it was going to take several years for the type of equipment you work on and the type of equipment I do. And they're sort of debating amongst themselves how quickly they would adopt it. And it seems to me, as sort of an independent bystander, that you all miss sometimes that the real estate owners and the property managers are going to have a say in this conversation too. And so the service providers, many will adopt quickly like you will. But if you don't, your hand will be forced by the people that employ you. The very progressive big tenants in this world will force you to use technology if you don't bring it to them. And you'll be differentiated against if you don't bring it forward. It is my humble opinion, but I just thought it was sort of an observation. I sat there for a half hour and I listened to this debate, and I'm like, some of you are missing the point. This issue will be brought to you if you don't bring it forward quickly. I don't know if you have an opinion on that or a different
so
position.
we're in alignment on stuff like this. I mean, the reality of this kind of stuff is the people that don't want to adapt are people that have just stopped looking for things to differentiate and grow their company, right? It's one of the things my analogy I usually use with this kind of stuff is this. I'm staying in a hotel right now as we speak because I'm at NAL right now. So I'm in Orlando, and these hotels do facelifts constantly. Okay. And the people, and you can always tell the hotels that don't, or the motels that don't. Nobody wants to stay someplace where they're worried they're going to get bed bugs and they're breathing in black mold and all the other stuff, right? So as consumers, we make that choice. At the end of the day, the big property managers, the JLLs, the Prologises, CBRE, all these people, right? They want to work with the companies that give their companies facelifts, So in hospitality, what's it, every 5 to 10 years, right? Yeah. What's crazy to me is how many landscaping professionals don't refuse to get the facelift to their own company. So then if that's the case, you might as well hang it up and just take a buyout.
I know.
Right?
I don't know. It's coming. That's all I can say is because we're talking to all three different stakeholders constantly, both the commercial service provider industry, the real estate owners, I guess the tenants, and the property managers. I'll tell you, some are much more progressive technology-wise than others. In fact, I really think the commercial service providers are ahead of the other three when it comes to the exterior of the building. And we may have talked about this before. So I'm not saying that this group of professionals isn't working hard on it. In fact, I think they're out in front on the outside of the box, but it's coming. In a hurry. I can tell you that with the things you're doing and others.
Yeah, I think, and this is nothing against any landscape professionals because I go to both sides, right? I'm a snow and ice management association member, professional organization, and there's landscapers and there's people that do both. But this is the one thing I found. I think snow and ice people have to always be leveling up because they're always fighting against that liability, whereas the landscape professional can kind of kick the can a little bit more because they don't have as much liability, so they don't have to get involved in technology. But you're right. I mean, the reality is it's coming. Property managers want it. So yeah, I mean, and this is great, and this is why, like I said, I'm bringing you on because I always I always find stuff like yours um, gets linked in too late, right? People like think about it too late, but you should really think about stuff like yours first because, like, for someone like myself, to explain, I found you at a show after I have millions of dollars of robots out. Okay, so I've already committed millions of dollars of robots. So where you're a massive value add for someone like myself is I can protect my investments. You know, if I could give anybody on the show advice for stuff like this, I would have figured out a way to protect my investment before they failed because, and we're going to get to how you're going to market and your go-to-market strategy so they can understand it. But
Yep.
I know roughly how much a system like yours might cost me in a year, and I can tell you just replacing 5 cutting motors in motor drives on one Echo robot, that cost me more money than partnering with View Robotics. So, and that's not assuming all the other value adds I might be able to sell to the customer, right? And that's the one thing I want to get people thinking. That's the whole reason I have the show is think about it as I'm having this conversation. I might do something to cover my back, but I might have something here where I can sell information back to the property owners that want it anyways, right? So go ahead and
No,
tell us about your go-to-market.
I think it's a
strategy.
value creator. I mean, and I like to draw a difference between like solving a problem and creating value. I think this does both. And I think, and I coach like young salespeople all the time when they ask me about career, and like that, everyone's so focused on solving a problem. I'm like, that's not enough anymore. You've got to create value. So I'd have to create value for the Langton group or AOS, in which hopefully then you could take that value, and create some value for your customer. This is a differentiator for you and others in the service provider industry. Differentiator. So what? Maybe you find a client that is interested in technology and they think that's cool. But I think that using tech like this can make you, save you hundreds, or depends how big you are, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on how you do business. So knowing what the situational awareness is of your sites is a very expensive proposition. Do I call my staff in? Do I not call my staff in? That call alone can be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Every time a salt truck might leave the yard, it's $1,000 trip for a government customer. Anyway, I digress. How we go to market, really, we're pretty focused on the commercial service provider industry because I think technology has, this type of technology has largely ignored them. So we're focused on working with people that do snow and ice, and really the top couple hundred companies in that industry. And again, people that don't know the business, Joe, like kind of might roll their eyes at that. What they don't know is it's a $30 billion a year industry in the US and Canada. So there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained and a lot of value to create with this group of customers. In addition to go to market, we're also working with some government clients who use the technology for roadway monitoring, but that's really not our core focus. And then there's temptations. They're like these other things that come up as a young company, where they're attractive, but it's hard to, and you have to stay disciplined about what you're focused on. I'll give you an example. We're meeting with, we just met with, and we'll meet again, one of the largest construction companies in the country. And so construction site monitoring is very expensive, and they want to find a better way to do it. The technology we have is basically what they need, but you don't just wade lightly into these industries, whether it's construction or snow or landscaping. And the one thing that my co-founder and I know really well is the customers. So I can't like go into the construction industry tomorrow and act like I know all their problems, but I have a really good sense of the issues that you and your companies face. And beyond the technology, I think that differentiates us. So we take our technology service directly to customers like you. And, that will change over the years, but right now that's what we're focused on.
So do customers like myself, do we buy the product? Do we lease the product? Like how does that work for people?
We made the decision to build the business as a subscription service. It's a fairly modern business model. And most think when I hold up a physical product, for those that were on video, that we used to be used to buying a product. And sometimes those products, the physical products, would come with a warranty of a month or a year or maybe 2 years. And then it would break. And then you might have to get parts sent to you. So we decided not to do that. We've decided to essentially lease our hardware to customers for an annual fee, although you can pay quarterly. And with that, you get the hardware that gets you the hardware instrument that gets you the data. It also comes with any cellular costs. It comes with any software or hosting costs. It comes with as many users as you want. And it comes with all the mounting equipment that you need to put the thing up. So it's essentially like a one line item per year cost per system. And we think, for those that are not used to that business model, it forces us to have skin in the game to make sure that technology is operating as we promised. So if something were to happen, then you send it back and we send you a new one the next day. And that's the promise we make as a service provider to our customers. So it's a little bit different twist on business. Some would call it hardware as a service.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that because we're in similar business models because I'm doing the same thing with robotics, with robots. And, one of the things that I've seen happen since I got into the space, and I've only been in since 2016, but honestly, time flies too because it seems like I've only been in for a year. But I've seen the evolution of that. Husqvarna had a 2G, 3G card, then that switched to 3G, then it's gone to 3G, 4G, and now it's a 2G, 4G. I mean, the cards are constantly switching, right? And it's important for people listening to this that maybe you don't understand this, why Patrick would say subscription type model is earlier in this podcast, he said it has its own 4G card, it's communicating, right? So if you purchased a piece of equipment like this and then you needed a different card, that's a problem. And then the other thing is, I'm sure, because it's all going back to one cloud, I'm assuming for you guys, right? So they need to make sure it communicates, otherwise the technology is useless. It's just a camera on a pole if it's not communicating.
Yep. And that's what you sign up for, and that's what I sign up for. It's there's a big onus on us to make sure that the equipment's working. Now the upside too, and I don't know how you feel about it with your business, is you get some extras when it's a service. So as we enhance our software, which we will constantly do, you'll get those enhancements because it's a service. Sure, and so the hardware is sort of the anchor. And then as long as you're with us as a customer, you'll start to get bells and whistles as we add them. And we won't add them just by guessing. We'll be asking along the way.
So Patrick, that's another great point to make, because so often people are like, well, it's technology, so the price will come down. And I always wonder why people do that, because, as we speak, I'm reading all my notes off my iPhone to ask you questions. And, the thing's like $1,000, $1,100. Actually, this one's probably $1,400 if I bought it, but it's affordable because it just gets put in the service model with T-Mobile. Right. So essentially, that's what I'm doing with robotic mowing. And essentially, that's what you're doing with View is you have the hardware, but there's a cost to communicate. There's a cost to put that data in the cloud. And then something that maybe no one else would think about is, if I want to extract that data, there's a cost to store it, to bring it back.
Bingo.
So all those things are clean. It's just simple. So then, I mean, are you to the point where you can share a pricing structure on
It's so we've made a decision. I don't know that it's like provocative, but we just put it on our website, and and the pricing will go down from what you see on the website depending on the term of agreement that you sign up for or the number of units you buy. It's not a great way of saying it, but I tell people this thing is $5 a day to be monitoring your building 24/7, 365. So that equates to somewhere in the realm of about $1,850 a year per device. So that gives you a sense of what it costs. But it actually, depending on volume, it can be much more affordable than that. So and I happen to know that for this particular type of package, that's very cost competitive.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to help sell some units for people for you because this is like the way I think. So every time there's a windstorm in Northern Illinois, we send a message out to our salespeople. Go check your sites, see if there's any tree damage, let the customer know. Anytime there's any hail damage, it's hey, go check the annual, see if there's going to be a problem with those flowers at Costco or wherever we're at, right? So just think about the opportunity in sales that you have by just saying, oh, there were thunderstorms, let's check all of our sites today. Oh, there was snow, but it wasn't a lot. Okay. And here's the big one for the snow industry: drift cleanup.
Yeah.
Okay. How many of us know that, okay, it snowed today, so we know it's a full call out, but drift cleanup, at least I'm going to explain how we do it at Langton. We put like skeleton crews together on different routes, and we say, load up the salt truck and just go site to site to site with your plow. You see any drifting, clear it, plow it, bill it. But now you can actually look and say, there's major drifting over here, get there first, because what we see happen constantly is we might have checked 7 sites by the time we got to the 8th site that had a drifting problem, but we showed up at 7 sites that didn't need us anyways. And then the site that did need us had to wait in line, right? So these are all the things, when you think $5 a day, think of how much better an organization you look like to that customer, because you're filtering, you're kind of sorting out the static, right?
I also would suggest that for service provider companies, is the model to scale really acquire a batch of sites, add staff, acquire a batch of sites, add staff, and so on and so forth, and get in this same cycle of having to build your overhead? That's a tough way to do business. It's a tough way to scale a business. And you talk about scale a lot on this podcast. I would suggest that one of the ways to do it is to leverage technology. This can be places you cannot be. It's kind of that simple. It's also a system of record, which helps you mitigate any risk or liability. So I would encourage folks to think about it as a way to scale your business regionally, as one example.
Well, Patrick, it's so awesome talking to someone who listens to the podcast, and I talk about scale all the time on the podcast because it's what's always asked of me. So people see, okay, AOS is growing, much like it's going to happen with View. It's going to grow exponentially. And then the people that want to invest are always like, well, how are we going to scale it? And to me, it's like, if you listen to my podcast, like, I'll tell you how I'm going to scale it, because I'm going to have partnerships with guys like Patrick and View, and I'm going to have partnerships with guys like Joel at Deep Lawn. I mean, the list can just go on and on. It's like, I'm going to use technology partnerships to put me to realize I don't have to be everywhere, because it amazes me how many like money people always say to me, but Joe, how are you going to be in 50 states? And I'm like, do you not realize I don't have to be anymore? Like, you're thinking the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I agree. And, I'll share with you, like I said, there are, 6 million buildings over 10,000 square feet that could use the service that AOS is providing. It's a huge opportunity for tech companies to work on the outside of these properties. And I think it's widely overlooked. Everyone wants to talk about smart buildings, Joe, and all they want to talk about is what's going on inside that box. And every time I use that little anecdote to property managers and real estate stakeholders, they're all like, yeah, you're right. And so now it's time to like press them and say, all right, let's start to build some programs like AOS has and like View has. I think what's really interesting is like our system and your system and maybe a drone company, these things will start to complement each other too. A camera obviously can complement what your system does. Maybe in the future it's drones, but tech will start to converge together for the exterior of the property. It's already happening. I know you've mentioned some partnerships that you're working on. And so it's coming on the outside of buildings pretty fast. And so we hope to kind of lead the way for what you can visually verify and visually sense over the next decade.
Well, everything that happens outside the box gets dragged into the box. That's reality for the property managers. So if it's outside the box, it's getting dragged in, and I think that's what they're realizing. So before, you listen to the show, so I always like to find out a little bit about your personal life and what you like to do for fun, and we're kind of getting to that point. So before we do, is there anything I missed that you want to add to get people understanding what you're doing at View and that I might have missed?
We're pretty easy to work with. It's me. If you're interested in working with us, you're going to talk to myself or our co-founder. So, it's a technology company, but we're pretty approachable. I think Joe would attest to that. I spent 3 or 4 hours with Joe and his team just trying to understand what their business was. And I always tell people, this is the technology we have. This is your business needs. Maybe they align, maybe they don't. That's okay. If they don't, I'm going to write down everything you said, and then we'll go build some technology that does fit what you need. So that's number one. Number two, we're getting ready to ship product. So for those that want to try out this technology to support the growth of your business and save money, viewrobotics.io. That's my
answer for the website. And I'll tell you, and I don't normally do this on a podcast, but I'll tell you, even so I don't have to go to your website. So I want to put in an order of Bull Valley. I want to have one for Ibis Club, for the Boca Raton. So and then Berkeley Hall, South Carolina. So I can think of probably easily 5 places I'm going to want to put these things at, and start to collect the data, because I also see it as a sales tool. If I can take your data and show some time lapse and show what our equipment does, then it's great. So like I said, when I see technology, I always see it as a double side. I can leverage both sides. It helps me manage, gives me education so I can make informed decisions, but it also helps me in my sales, So tell me, you said you're from a family of 5. Are you oldest, youngest, middle? Where are you at?
I'm number 4. I'm the forgotten number 4. I have an older brother. My number 1 is a brother and 3 sisters. And interestingly, my mom's one of 13, which was 10 girls out of 13. So there's a lot of listening happening growing up around my household. But yeah, family's everything to me, man. It's a big family. We still get together. Weddings, family weddings are like the most fun thing that happens in my life at this point.
And where are you located as you take the call today?
I'm in South Bend, Indiana. Now, one does not dream to grow up here, but you can't help but who you marry and fall in love with. So my wife is a South Bend native. And so I sit here in South Bend. First time in a while, I haven't been on the road. I think since I've seen you, it seems like I've traveled North America twice and over again. So I'm happy to be home today. So my wife, Beth, is here with me. We have 3 little kids. Vera's 6, Clarence is 4, Larson is 1, and we have another one coming in February. So I've got a lot.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. So, are you gonna be going for 13, or are you gonna just try to keep the family of 5 thing? Or?
No, thank you. And I'm ready to round out my family at 4. That's
so you're okay with even numbers, because us landscapers, it's like you got to be 1, 3s, and 5s. The even numbers, they don't work,
I don't know. Have me back in a couple of years, and we'll check in on that. But as I approach 40. And leading a brand new technology company, I got a lot going on, man. So it's hard to split my time as it is. So 4 sounds good to me.
Yeah. So you said you were an athlete when you're talking about the Bull. So what's your sport of choice?
Well, I played everything growing up. It was football was sort of my first love. I played through high school. I fell in love with tennis late, so I played tennis in high school, football in high school, basketball. I played baseball most of my life. I ran track 1 year. Now it's like golf when I can. And play tennis. And if and I want to get back into playing basketball, but again, that's a tough one to jump back into. So yeah, golf and tennis, like white collar sports now that I'm old.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say 40 is old, but I'm only saying that because I'm 43. So then you're making me feel
Right.
bad, you know.
No,
But you know, but yeah, I mean, golf's definitely better. But you know, I laugh because my 17-year-old stepson somehow threw out his back golfing the other day, and I didn't even know that was possible.
mm,
So I guess you can still get injured in golf. So you might as well go for basketball, Patrick.
all right,
You know,
I'm in.
I mean, if you didn't hurt yourself golfing, you might as well just go big. You know.
Yeah, let's do
So
it. Yeah.
yeah. So well, with that, I think this is going to be a great show. I think people are going to learn a lot. I truly hope that people go to your site and look up your product. I think it is a huge value for the snow and ice industry that I love, and I think it can be a value for the professional landscaper also. And I just want to thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being a listener. I love what you're doing. I'm glad we have a relationship, and I look forward to the future of our relationship.
Thanks, Joe. That means a ton to me and my co-founder, Chris. And congrats to you on your success, both with Langton, which is highly impressive, and what's to come with AOS. I know it's not a small business anymore, and it's going to grow fast. So I hope to be a small part of it.
Well, thank you. I think you're going to be a larger part of it than you can imagine, but a lot of innovation to come. And like I said, I'm excited to have met you and made the relationship.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon, brother. Appreciate it.